I'm Darrin Smith, and if you are watching the premiere showing of this video, I am here watching it with you. So please say hello in the comment section below and let me know where you are watching from. And also, if you have any questions or comments while we watch this video together, please don't hesitate to leave them in the comment section, and I will be available to answer them. This is the first time that I have premiered a video on YouTube, and I am hoping that it is going to be a unique and fun way for us to better connect. So without any further ado, I hope you enjoy the video, and I absolutely thank all of you for your continued support and encouragement. Hello and welcome to Squatchspot.com. I'm Darrin Smith, and after a long and arduous journey, I finally made it up to my encounter location from March 3rd, 2020. Now, this is the first time I've been able to get up into this location this season, and this time I made sure to have all the audio recorders recording, and they are continuing to do so at the moment. As I pulled into the area, I didn't want to miss out on that initial vocalization like I heard the last time I pulled into the area. However, this time it was quiet as I pulled into the area, and just in general, the forest seems incredibly quiet. So at the moment, I am just kind of immersing myself in the environment and just kind of observing what's going on around me. And I am gearing up with plans on heading into the woods here. However, I'm not sure I'm going to be heading all the way into the nest site that I discovered in March of 2020, just because it is it's quite a distance from this location, and with all this snow on the ground, it's going to be difficult to get into that environment. So at this point, we're just kind of playing things by ear. I'm just going to kind of sit here and observe the environment. I have the parabolic microphone out. I have the audio recorders recording, and of course I have the camera equipment out as well. And I am excited to be up in the environment, and I am definitely anxious to get investigating the surrounding areas to see if we can find any physical evidence that concludes that the Sasquatch are still in the area. As I mentioned, the Sasquatch generally hang out just below the snow line, and at the moment, this is the perfect location, and as the snow melts off, I think they will be moving up to those higher elevations for the coming summer months. So there is a good possibility that the Sasquatch are in the area, and I am kind of anxious to get started with my investigation of the area. For those of you who may be new to my channel, I am an independent Sasquatch researcher in the California Sierra Nevada mountains, where my passion began when I had a sighting of one of these creatures while on a solo backpacking trek. Since this initial encounter, I have been on numerous expeditions across the United States, and in 2017 I moved into my home in the Yosemite foothills, where I spent an incredible amount of time conducting field research. The location we are visiting on this episode is a location where I encountered Sasquatch on March 3rd, 2020. During that incident, I captured some very compelling audio recordings. I followed a Sasquatch through the woods using my parabolic microphone, and during an analysis of the video footage from that encounter, it was discovered I had captured a figure hiding in the brush in close proximity to me. A figure we believe is a Sasquatch. I've returned to this area a number of times to conduct follow-up investigations and to continue monitoring the area. And during one of those investigations, I discovered a possible Sasquatch nest where I discovered heavy brush that was groomed to create pathways into the nest site. I found numerous footprint impressions in the area, and I also discovered multiple black hairs in the nest. Based on the totality of evidence collected during the initial encounter and subsequent follow-up investigations, I am convinced I had encountered Sasquatch that day, and I am excited to be back in the area to continue our investigation of this location, and to see if the Sasquatch are still in the area. During my initial encounter on March 3rd, 2020, I was using a parabolic microphone to record sounds that I was hearing coming from the embankment above me, and I captured some amazing audio recordings of primate guttural sounds, followed by knocking and a very loud huff. The audio recordings have been analyzed, and during this process, the target sounds were isolated and amplified, and the background noise reduced. Let's listen to those recordings. Here is the original recording. There is a lot of discussion as to how the Sasquatch create these knocking sounds often observed. They could be using a stick to rap up against a tree or log, or they could actually be slapping their chests. And there's also a lot of discussion the sound could actually be a vocalization. Here is the audio recordings from that day enhanced. The most notable sound on the audio recordings is the huff sound. It was this sound and the subsequent analysis conducted that strongly supported these audio recordings came from a very large primate. Okay, so I know there's a large number of you out there who don't like to hear the woo factor when it comes to Sasquatch research. I generally tend to think that the Sasquatch is of flesh and blood, and I generally don't put them in a paranormal category. However, as I've mentioned numerous times on previous videos, I have had some very unusual happenings that have been unusual. And before coming out into the field, I make sure all my electronics are working properly. I make sure they all have fresh batteries and plenty of space on their memory cards. And already today, I had discovered on my parabolic here, the audio recorder is not powering on. So that is curious in the sense that the recorder did have fresh batteries and it should be working properly. And the last time I was in this environment, I experienced some unusual technical difficulties as well. And also with the parabolic microphone today, as I am sweeping the area, I am getting a very strong static that is drowning out a lot of the sounds in the environment. And there's also an unusual humming sound. So I am kind of curious about what's going on there, because this static sound was very similar to the static I was getting in Area X. It's just a very loud static that drowns out a lot of the environmental sounds. And also I've experienced this phenomenon before. I explained I was on an expedition and we were conducting some maneuvers in Arizona. So I was able to get another audio recorder recording, and I connected it to my parabolic microphone. So I am hoping I captured that static on audio. What I find very curious is the static is coming from the direction of where that nest is located. As I mentioned, the nest is quite a distance into the forest. However, as I train the parabolic microphone in that direction, that is where I'm getting the static. So at this point, I'm going to kind of gear up and maybe plan on moving into that environment. That sound I heard, I don't know what it was. I'm hoping I captured it on audio, but it sounded like a very loud bark. That's the only way that I could describe it, almost like a single canine bark. It was very loud and very sharp. So I'm definitely hoping I captured that on audio, because I have my Zoom 3D surround sound microphone recording. It's been recording at all times, even before we moved into this environment. So I'm hoping I captured it on audio there. And I'm going to continue with the parabolic, just kind of sweeping the area. And then I am going to gear up and get moving into the forest. Okay, for those of you who have been following my channel, you probably recognize this location, but this is the location I believe the sentry was located as I pulled into the area. And I think it's, as I mentioned, where I think the sentry was located. It saw me pulling up into the area from down below this embankment, and it saw me parking my vehicle, at which point it made that loud vocalization. And you can see, I don't know if you can see behind me, but from this vantage point, you can see a considerable distance down the road, and you can also see a considerable distance up the road. And I've just come up here to kind of check out the area to see if there's any sort of physical evidence that leads me to believe that the Sasquatch are currently in the area. During my initial follow-up investigation of this area following my encounter on March 3rd, 2020, I discovered this very heavy brush in the area that was creating an impenetrable barrier. This brush is covered with very sharp needle-like thorns, and thanks to a couple of my viewers, Squatch Zone and Neil Palmer, I now know this plant is called buckbrush, an extremely dense flowering shrub that can grow up to heights of nearly 10 feet. And as I mentioned on previous episodes, using Google Earth, I can see not only does this shrub grow a considerable distance in this area, it creates an absolute impenetrable wall. However, I've also mentioned during my initial investigation of this area, I discovered two very distinct pathways where this brush had been cleared out, pathways that led to what I believe is a Sasquatch nest, where I captured that figure on camera and where I discovered multiple black hairs. A preliminary analysis has been conducted on the hair samples using a high-powered microscope, and noted these hair samples collected at this nest site are lacking a medulla, one of the primary characteristics of Sasquatch hair, which adds substantial credibility that I have indeed discovered a Sasquatch nest. Okay, so just down there is where the nest site is located, and I'm not going to go any further at this point. And the reason for it is I've already investigated the area. I do believe it's a nest, and I don't want to contaminate that area, meaning I don't want to continue to venture into that location to make it uncomfortable for the Sasquatch, which will most likely encourage them to leave the nest and move to a new location. So if that has not already happened, I don't want to do anything to see that it does. So that's why I'm not venturing into the location where that nest is situated. But I have come to this location, and I'm here for a specific reason. As I've mentioned several times on previous videos, whenever I am venturing into an area that I am monitoring, I try to dress in a similar fashion, with the hopes that the Sasquatch in the area will become accustomed to my appearance, and I will often play a particular tune on a little Mexican flute that I bring with me into the field, just to announce my presence. And then I just sit and observe the environment, with the hopes that the Sasquatch will make their presence known to me. I spent a considerable amount of time observing the area near the nest site, after which I trekked back to my vehicle, where I continued to monitor the area and to eat some lunch. Note here that my back is intentionally facing the embankment where the Sasquatch was situated during my initial encounter on March 3rd, 2020. However, I have a camera focused in that direction. My hope is the Sasquatch will move in to observe me from the embankment, and with my back facing them, they may be more bold in their approach, and with any luck, I will capture them on camera. I continued to investigate the area for a considerable amount of time, and although I had hoped to remain in the area to conduct night maneuvers, the wind had picked up dramatically, and it was clear there was a storm pulling into the area, and for safety's sake, it was important I get off the mountain. This area is prone to sudden snowstorms, and with the high winds in the area, there was a legitimate concern of tree falls. However, my investigation of this area is far from over, and I will definitely be continuing to monitor this area. The unusual sound I heard during the recording of this episode is still a mystery, and when I went back to check on the Zoom audio recorder, I discovered it had malfunctioned and had not been recording. This was the second audio recorder that had malfunctioned that day. As many of you may recall, during my initial encounter with the Sasquatch at this location on March 3rd, 2020, I had digital files that were missing on 2 of my audio recorders and from my YouTube video camera. I have never experienced such a loss of data before, and on that day I had 3 pieces of technology all experiencing the same malfunction. I'm also very intrigued by the unusual static and humming noise that I was hearing on the parabolic microphone as I trained the microphone towards the nest site. I have now experienced this phenomenon on 3 separate occasions, and on 2 of those occasions I was convinced the Sasquatch were in the area. The other occasion was while I was in that area I have dubbed Area X because of the unusual happenings I have been experiencing at that location. I know the Sasquatch are real, and I'm convinced I experienced them at this location on March 3rd, 2020. The evidence I collected during the initial encounter and the subsequent follow-up investigation is solid, and I am firm in my belief that the Sasquatch do spend a considerable amount of time at this location. There are a number of habitat nuances in this area I believe are very enticing for the Sasquatch, and I feel the nest site I discovered is a clear indication of this. With the significant amount of snow still at this elevation, I believe the Sasquatch will very likely remain in this area for some time, until the snow melts off, at which point they will begin their trek up to those higher elevations, and I intend to continue my surveillance of this area. I want to thank all of you for your continued support of my channel. It is truly the encouragement I am receiving from all of you that keeps me motivated to continue the search. And until next time, I'm Darrin Smith, and I'll see you here at Squatchspot.com.